Mi nombre es Ofelia. ¿Quién eres tú?
¿Yo? Soy un fauno.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Frankenstein's podcast, where it's all about the monster. We are a creature feature podcast about monsters and why we love them. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Praska, and with me is
your other host, Khalid Hussein.
What's going on, Khalid?
Not much, Joe. Just watch the first half of the Spurs-Knicks game, Game 3. It's pretty exciting. I don't care about sports, but my roommates do, so I'm getting excitement through osmosis.
You're a sports guy now.
I unfortunately am sports guy adjacent now. Yes.
I mean, us like Minnesota folks are pretty happy for Cat, so good for him.
Yeah. Proud of you, Cat.
Yeah, good for him. Really stoked about this podcast tonight, though.
Yeah, why is that?
Got a very special guest, and I'm going to bring her in right now. We got Ana Victoria Esquivel Vásquez. She's a Los Angeles-based multidisciplinary makeup artist specializing in beauty, special effects, and illustration with over a decade of professional experience spanning film, television, and high-level production. Welcome, Ana.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, thank you. I was like super stoked when I think we follow each other on like our socials or something, but I'm like,
yeah,
I always reach out to people like, especially like in the industry to come to this podcast because we're like a creature feature podcast, and it's like you responded so quickly and you were excited, so I'm like, I'm really excited to have you on. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks.
We have a couple like new guest questions for all the new folks who join us. The first one I want to ask you, what is your favorite in like all of pop culture? This could be like books, movies, TV, anything, games even. What's your favorite creature or monster? And if it's not the same, what do you consider to be the scariest for you?
Okay. I think that out of all of pop culture, and I know that a lot of people say this one, but I have different reasons for it, okay?
Okay.
It's the Xenomorph from Alien, fan favorite of a lot of people, like I said. However, the reason why it's my favorite, it is because it was my introduction to the world of creature design when I was 3 years old. My grandma made me watch Alien, which is kind of messed up, but
Wow, three?
I was not scared of the alien as much as I was fascinated by its design. So I think that opened a door and made me kind of fascinated by these types of, scary creatures with interesting anatomy. So yeah, it's always been the xenomorph.
That is amazing. I always feel like I talk about how like I watch things young. Like I feel like I watched Alien at like 8 or 9, but like 3, that's a flex.
Oh, yeah. And I remember very clearly.
Wow. It's amazing though. Like it is truly like a absolutely like kind of beautiful creature, but
Yeah.
it's cool. That's a really good answer.
Yes. And the most scary one for me is absolutely not the xenomorph. It is Pennywise from the It book because he has the ability to clock what your worst fear is, and then he can turn into that fear, and not just in a I look this way. He can set up an entire scenario for you to experience your worst fear. And I think that that is absolutely freaking terrifying. And if he were to do that to me, I don't know if I would survive. But there's an honorary mention for something else that I feel like a lot of people might not know about, but I want to give it a shout out because it's some of the best horror that I have ever witnessed. There is an audio series. It is a podcast, but it is a show. So it's not like a talk podcast. It's a show. So the actors are like voice actors, and it's called the Magnus Archives. And in the Magnus Archives, there is a super interesting concept of these eldritch terrors that are like gods, and they represent the primal fears of humanity. The way that they are described in that story is the scariest thing I've ever heard in my life, and it's some of the best horror writing that I've also ever witnessed. So shout out to the Magnus Archives.
Wow. I love that. So I just finished season one of Magnus Archives. It's
Ooh,
so good. It's so Jonathan
yes,
Sims, right? It's
yes. I'm
amazing.
glad you know about
Yeah,
it.
it rules. It rules. We had a guest on not too long ago who was kind of plugging for it and at the end, and we're out. So I gave it a shot, and I absolutely love it right now. It's really scratching like a really cool like horror like creature like eldritch horror specifically itch that I have, and I'm a big fan. That's a great point. Yeah. For Pennywise, I want to follow up on that. Do you prefer book, miniseries, more recent movies, any version of it specifically?
I'm going to say something that is going to be a little controversial in the horror community.
Okay.
I love Tim Curry. Love him. Love him. However, I find that the new Bill Skarsgård Pennywise, for me, is more similar to what I personally interpreted in the book than the Tim Curry Pennywise. And the reason for this is because even if Tim Curry is incredible and amazing and his acting skills are out of this world, I feel like the just like the character design of the Tim Curry Pennywise feels like a guy in a clown costume, whereas the new Pennywise, the second you see him, you know that thing is not human. And the whole point of Pennywise is that thing is not human. So I was very fascinated by, all the decisions that they made, and the design that Studio ADI did for that Pennywise, because that was more kind of like what I imagined when I read the book.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could see how you could say that's controversial, but I
And
think like Bill
yeah,
Skarsgård's great, right?
I'm not like a hive mind person. I
Yeah,
100% have my own opinions about everything, whether they're popular or not. So I try to make my own thoughts about things.
yeah, that's totally fair. I love that. Thanks for answering that one. Second question for you: what do you consider yourself like most geeky about? Like, what's on your geek card?
Oof. This is something very, very niche, but I am really into like the whole social, political, and mythical uh sto history of late antiquity, specifically when the Roman Empire was starting to fall apart,
Hmm.
and there was a syncretism between ancient Greece and ancient Egypt. And I am super fascinated by all the political things that were happening, but also the different types of religions that were being born in that period when the two cultures collided. And you know how different types of Gnosticism were born and Hermeticism was born. And I am a huge fan of, researching and learning about that period of human history and all the things that came out of it. Because there's also like a lot of really interesting parallels with what we're experiencing now, at least in the US. So that is my hyperfixation.
Wow, that is definitely one we haven't had before.
It's a good one. It's a very good one.
I
I
said it
like
was
it.
very niche.
Yeah. No, I love that. I like this question because I like when people get super niche like that. That's perfect. So question for you, like specifically, when I was reading like your bio, you kind of talk about how you're originally from Panama City, you studied at SCAD in Savannah, Georgia, and continued on to the Academy of Freelance Makeup in London, and then you found yourself in California.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a globe-trotting journey. Could you tell us a little bit about like your journey and like what brought you to like VFX creation and like makeup designing?
Yes, so I feel sometimes like I've had so many different lives in this one life. I've done so many different things and I have been through so many different experiences. I've lived in 5 countries. I used to come from a different career. I used to be an architect.
Hmm.
I don't do that anymore, but the knowledge that I absorbed during that period of my life has made me a better makeup artist. I got into makeup sort of by accident because I'm a classically trained artist. I'm a fine artist, I'm a painter, I'm a sculptor, I'm all of those things. I did go to an art school for a year of my life, like you said, Savannah College of Art and Design. I didn't necessarily think I was going to end up being a makeup artist. The thing is that because I've always painted and I am a painter, when I was in school and people were starting to like get ready for parties and whatever, like my friends would always ask me to do their makeup
Hmm.
because they thought that I was better at it than them. And that became photographers that noticed my makeup asking me if I wanted to make up on their models. And then that became fashion designers asking me to do makeup on their models for the runways. And then I started doing makeup for theater. And in theater is where I was introduced to theatrical character makeup. When I had those opportunities, I realized how fascinated I was by the process of makeup design for things that were beyond just the beauty world, but more prosthetics and application of hair and all these things. I became really fascinated by it. And in Panama, I won uh the yearly award for theater for the category of makeup when I was relatively young. And that kind of became a pressure for me because once you win that award, like what else is there to achieve in Panama? I hit a ceiling very early on, so I pressured myself to aspire for something bigger and challenge myself further. So I thought there would be nothing more challenging than try to make it into a film industry in LA. So thankfully, because my mom was born in the US and I am a dual citizen, I always knew that if I ever wanted to, I could move to the US and I could legally work here. So I moved here in December of 2017. I took a few courses at another makeup school here because I had already gone to a makeup school in London previously. And during that time, I tried to find work. It was very hard when nobody knows you in LA, nobody wants to hire you. But somebody opened the door and gave me a chance, and that allowed me to have a seat in the table with other effects artists. My first boss in the industry was Jordu Schell, who is a creature designer for Avatar and some of the aliens in Men in Black, and even like some of the xenomorphs in Alien, I think, Resurrection.
Hmm.
And he is one of the most important creature designers in the industry. And my first job being his assistant really connected me to other people and allowed me to learn all the skills and to, once I left that job, be able to be hired everywhere else. So that's kind of how I ended up doing this.
Hmm.
Wow.
Wow. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And you actually sent me a list of some of the projects that you've been a part of. Could you just like give me like a highlight reel for some of our listeners?
Absolutely. So, there was a period of 2 years where I was quote unquote Chucky's hairdresser because when they were doing the Chucky TV show, which is really good by the way, I was styling and cutting all of his wigs and shaping them to be like that, but I was doing a lot of things too. Like I had a very small involvement in making the molds for some of the animatronic stuff. I was helping make like the skins for his face. So Chucky was like a big part of my life. Then I had the opportunity to work with Guillermo del Toro, who is the whole inspiration behind me wanting to do this for a living. That was incredible. I worked on Cabinet of Curiosities,
Oh, nice.
specifically on the episode of The Autopsy, and I had the opportunity to help make all of those dead bodies that were featured in that episode.
Ooh.
Then I also had the opportunity to work on The Substance, which is the most recent big movie that I worked on. I was the live cast technician for Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. And when I was doing that, I had no idea what this movie was going to be. I thought it was going to be a very small indie thing. And the makeup department won an Oscar for that, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, those are some of like the most known projects that I have worked on.
That's so cool. I mean, it's got to be so cool to be like able to work with some of those people too, especially.
Yeah.
I also saw on your list, this is not, I don't think as well of known of a project, but the Dead Don't Die you worked on as well, which
Yes.
is a movie that I kind of like, it kind of missed me, but I just recently watched the trailer for, and I'm really excited to check that one out. That has a lot of like
That's
Bill
Jim
Murray.
Jarmusch?
Yeah, Bill Murray's in it, like
I
Adam
love that
Driver.
movie.
You seen
It's
it?
so good.
I really
Yeah.
want to see that. But you worked on that too, right? Did you do the zombie makeup?
Yeah, I think I was doing the molds for the background zombies of the
Cool.
movie. Like I was making the molds for that, and that was like one of the very first things that I did super early on in my career. But yeah, I was just like helping make the molds for the background zombies.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. Well, thank you for sharing us with us your journey and like kind of some of the stuff that you've worked on. I'm really excited to get to the topic that we're discussing here, especially given the Del Toro connection. Before we do that, though, I got a question for you, Khalid.
What is it?
I got a. I'm gonna say it right now. I got a fantastic question for you.
Okay, hit
Yeah.
me.
What do you call a fairy that doesn't like to shower?
A fairy that doesn't like to shower.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know, grimy? I don't know what.
Stinkerbell.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
Were were you fond of that one?
Nope.
Cause fawn, right? Get it?
Anna,
Get it?
Anna,
Get it?
Anna, I deal with this every episode. So your reaction was very like reaffirming for me. That's how I react every time.
And that's a segue, Khalid. What are we talking about?
Oh.
Thanks for asking, Joe. Today we are talking about the 2006 fantasy horror film Pan's Labyrinth, directed by Guillermo del Toro. And I have a synopsis from your homeboy Khalid, aka me, and it goes a little something like this. Ophelia's the new kid in town, and boy, does her stepdad suck. If that wasn't bad enough, she also stumbles into a fairy tale that's more terrifying than magical. Struggling to help her bedridden mother against the backdrop of a fascist Spain, she manages to find friends among foes while learning that growing up isn't all that it's cracked up to be.
What a monster!
They're creatures of the abstract that live off potential energy.
It's alive!
Thank you, Khalid, for the synopsis. I want to get into some thoughts here, but I wanted to give like a little bit of background about this movie. This is an interesting one. So we at this podcast absolutely love Guillermo del Toro and Doug Jones, who's in this. But so Guillermo del Toro grew up in Mexico, in Guadalajara specifically, and so I was kind of curious when I was looking into the background of this one, like where his fascination kind of with like Francisco Franco's fascist rule over Spain came from. And according to an interview he did with the Austin Chronicle, he said that he actually was good friends with like a Spanish refugee in Mexico at the time, who kind of became a father figure to him. And he also became very fascinated by reading kind of counterculture comic books from post-war Spain that were very explicitly anti-fascist, which kind of influenced this as well as The Devil's Backbone, which The Devil's Backbone is kind of like a companion piece to this film as well, one of his earlier films. So I think that was really interesting. This one kind of set out to combine his love of fairy tales and like his kind of anti-fascist beliefs. There's also like critiques on like traditional Catholic dogma at time, which we'll get into. He grew up strictly Catholic. We'll see that a little bit, especially like given the Catholic Church's sort of like relationships to the Franco regime at the time. So it's a very interesting like background, but ultimately like Del Toro wanted to make this film outside of the like Hollywood sort of producer setup, because he worked on Mimic, he worked on Hellboy, and he was kind of craving to go out beyond that work. He wanted to be untethered from like some of the thematic constraints that he felt existed with American producers. And this was an absolute kind of like passion project for him, which is something we'll get into in a little bit here. But I wanted to kind of give that as a bit of background here. But let's get into it here. Anna, I want to bring you in right away. You were the one who suggested this one. You said this was kind of an inspiration for you as well. Can you give us some of your thoughts on it?
Yes. When this movie came out, I was not that well acquainted with the work of Guillermo del Toro because I was not one of those people who watched Hellboy when it came out. So I was not, that knowledgeable about his work. And when I saw Pan's Labyrinth, I fell so in love with the vision of this artist that I needed to know everything about him. I needed to know everything about his artistic process because his world building, his storytelling abilities And just his use of magical realism and his blending of fantasy with kind of gothic horror was something that I had never seen, at least in my time. I know that there are old movies that, kind of fall in that category, but I had never seen something new come out and be like that. So I became fascinated, and that was the movie that started my bug of like, I want to be a part of this world. I want to work on projects like this, and I want to have the opportunity of belonging in the creation of, this kind of art.
Wow. Yeah. How about you, Khalid? What's your relationship to this one?
So I was one of those people that knew Guillermo del Toro pretty much primarily through Hellboy. Uh, I was a big fan of it. I was definitely the demographic when that came out, just like a teenage boy. It's a comic book adaptation. It was so fun. And then obviously years later, I realized I was the same guy that did Blade 2, which like I love so much. It's just like as far as sequels go, just like such a great like opening up of like a fantastical world in and of itself. As far as Pan's Labyrinth goes, I didn't watch it until like last year. I finally got around to watching it based off of like how much you were always raving about it, Joe.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, as much as I love the Hellboy movies he directed, as much as I love Blade 2 and even Pacific Rim, which I think is like just a classic in its own right, this is like his like opus as far as his career goes to me. Like it's just such a like beautiful story, both visually and just dramaturgically. Like the script is like so just pitch perfect, and then you're given like a feast of visuals from beginning to end, and it's so heartbreaking but satisfying at the end in like just the right way. It's very melancholic in that sense. And yeah, I rewatched it yesterday, and I remain just so floored at like what an achievement this is. And like that, like, it's like sometimes like you hear about like a director's passion project, and like for one reason or another it just doesn't like connect the way that they wanted it to, and that's just not the case here. And I'm just like so grateful we have something like this. It's a great example of like what a talented director can do when it's like a subject they care about. What about you, Joe?
No, I love this movie. I actually watched this in the theater when it first came out. Also, this was this was a date movie for me and Nicole, who when we watched it, she was just like in tears, and she was like, "Why did you bring me to this?" But she came to appreciate. I've told the story before, and we are now married. And we rewatched it last night or the other night, and it was amazing. It still holds up, and I loved thinking about when we watched it. This was like I think in high school when we watched it. We were high schoolers at the time. Some of the things that really stuck out to me, the fantastical elements, but also just like the sheer like kind of melancholy, the sadness of it really stuck out to me. But this time rewatching it, I feel like some of the stuff that really stuck out to me, sort of the like the more realism element of it, the like the sort of the rebels versus fascist element, like stuck out way more to me than I remembered it as much. The Mercedes character, and to even a little bit lesser extent, the doctor character, like really, I felt were way more pronounced and way more interesting. So like just to kind of give an outline, like there's sort of like this dueling storyline of Ophelia, the young girl, sort of like doing these three tasks to kind of regain this possible place in this fantastical realm as like a princess, while also it's during like Franco's Spain, this like fascist dictatorship rule where there's like rebels in the hills trying to fight this like uh fascist regime, and there's the captain, and that and the captain is their stepfather, who's arguably a incredibly evil character, I think. So it's interesting. I remember some of those scenes really stuck out to me. The fantasy stuff, but the more realistic ones really stuck out to me this time, and I really appreciated the blending of the two. Like you kind of mentioned, Anna, the sort of like magical realism of it all, and I think that taking those two storylines and really blending it, like Guillermo del Toro just had this like brilliant vision, and it came together. Like for me, it's like a 5 star out of 5 star film. I absolutely love it. Um, One of the things that I feel like rewatching and doing the research for this, I feel like I could never, ever, ever spell the word labyrinth, like ever. And I don't know, I misspell it every single time. But now, after all the research I did for this and like looking it up and like re-looking it up every time, I can now spell labyrinth like from memory. I'm really proud of that now.
All right, do it. Let's see it. Spelling bee. Spell
L A
labyrinth.
Labyrinth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Checks out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm proud of that. Curious for you guys, is there like a element of the story that hits harder, the fantastical element or more the realistic element?
For me, I'll tell you, for me, it's Guillermo's kind of like forced skepticism.
Mm.
And I don't know if anybody has ever talked about this before in the way that I am, but I decided to call it forced skepticism because he lays out this world in front of you, and yet he keeps you surrounded by enough reasons to doubt the veracity of this world. Like you can always think it's all in her head. You can always think like, oh, it's because she's a child. So he kind of sets you up for skepticism while at the same time he is immersing you into the fantastical world. So I think that was fascinating is that this is just a test of faith because I think that part of his storytelling abilities is making the viewer have a conversation with themselves about how much do they believe and how much are they just like ignoring the magical signs in their own world. So in the end, he always resolves this because he gives you an element that is like an undeniable proof of magic, in which case in this movie was the chalk, because if she didn't have the chalk, there was no way for her to leave that room.
Mm.
So if you
Hmm.
revisit the story, you know that that is the only thing that doesn't line up with the skeptical narrative. But I love that dance between the belief and the non-belief because I think that that is so, it speaks so much to human nature and the way that we experience things. And I just love that he can present the fantasy, but always keep it tied to our relationship with fantasy.
Yeah, that's well said. I really love that point that you're making too, because I think um it is questionable. Like I feel like especially with the Mercedes character, like she's kind of like I don't believe in fawns or I don't believe in fairies, but she kind of plays along with Ophelia's like conversation to her. But I found an interview with Del Toro himself where he himself has said that it's objectively real, like the fantastical elements. Like you mentioned the chalk part where like there's no way she could have really gotten to the captain's office, right? In that
Yeah.
one scene. And he talks about the flower at the end is sort of like an element to it, although it's kind of like fairy tale-esque. But there was what was the other one? Oh, the part where she's running from him in the maze too, when the maze kind of opens up with her and then he reaches the dead end. So I kind of appreciate that there's sort of like we've talked about in the past in this podcast, like I feel like we did some David Lynch, and we talked about like, oh, it's great how it's so subjective and like doesn't mean any, like take interpretations for things. But I actually really like in this case that there is sort of like a like an like a right answer, if that makes sense, you know?
I completely agree. I think that the movie lays it out that it is objectively real by the
Mm.
end. Like there's enough evidence to point that way, and I love that. Uh I tend to bristle at movies or television shows that try to have it both ways, where like the fantasy element is kind of like, is it in the main character's head or not? Obviously, there's a time and place for it, and it can like enrich certain stories, but more often than not, I just why am I looking at all of this if it's not in some way real, you know? And so I love that in this case. And um more to it, I think I love what the fantasy world kind of says in conversation with the scenes that take place in our world, in the sense that there's a equal brutality to both, you know? I think that there's a tendency with like more modern or postmodern like children's storytelling to kind of make like a child's fantasy a safe place in a way that I I understand the rationale, we want to keep kids protected, but I was always attracted to like the grim fairy tales and like stuff like that where it's very much like no, even in the fantasy world, like there are things that you should genuinely be terrified of, if not more than the real world. And so for this movie to really explore that and not really ever give Ophelia a break, like it's not she didn't just like stumble onto Hogwarts. Yeah.
Hmm.
She stumbled onto like an underground world with its own set of rules where she might be even in more jeopardy than she is in the fascist camp, which is crazy to think about. And so yeah, I love that they honor that they're both equally real.
Yeah, that's a great point. What do you guys think about the captain character, which is actor Sergi Lopez, who I remember like all my knowledge of this character or this actor specifically is from Pan's Labyrinth, and I think of him as just like this like evil. He's like an evil character, right? He's terrifying. But I was reading into him, and apparently he's a very versatile actor. In Spain, he was kind of known. I mean, he did some thrillers, but he was kind of known as a comedic and romantic actor for a while too, which is kind of interesting. I thought he had a phenomenal performance as just being like this really terrifying person, and I think that's like a really interesting element of like especially Del Toro's like like thematic through lines in a lot of his films where the human characters are often more terrifying than some of the monstrous characters. What do you guys think of that character?
I thought that he was deeply disturbing,
Yeah.
and he's a very triggering character because if you're any kind of person who's ever experienced like an abusive family member in any shape or form, that character is, it's very close to home. And I also feel like there was such graphic gore around the demise of that character that has stayed with me for years and years and years because it's been, oh my God, has it been 20 years since that movie came out?
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
think
God, it
so.
Oh
Yeah.
has.
God. Yeah, it stayed with me for 20 years. The fact that like when he cut his mouth open and he like
Yeah.
stitched it together and took the shot, and then when he was shot in the face and his eyeball like went all red, like
Yeah.
oh God, like
Yeah.
it his death and his demise was as brutal as his, like everything in that character aligns with the way that he was designed. So I think that's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, that's that scene. I was thinking about that too. The scene where his like lip is cut or like his mouth is
Hmm.
cut open. Like when you look in the mirror, like it's incredibly realistic. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing. That's super well. And like when yeah, like when he takes the shot and like bleeds through the Band-Aid.
Hmm.
Oh, all of those touches were so good. Like he yeah, and then his final demise, like it's gruesome, but it's also kind of cathartic. Like the
Yeah.
what does he say? Like tell my son something about the watch
Is it
and
tell him
The
what time I
watch.
died?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
And Mercedes like, no, he will not even know your name, which is
Yes.
incredibly badass. Like great moment for her,
Hmm.
right?
And just like the one moment of like anything besides pure evil that he exudes in the movie is like that moment of like he's like sad and exasperated, and then he looks to Pedro like, "Is she right?" And then boom, Pedro shoots him.
Yeah, so
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Plus, there's nothing more satisfying in this life than watching a narcissist see and hear that he is going to be forgotten. Oh, it's
Hmm.
so satisfying.
no, it's great. And I mean, I echo both your guys' sentiments around him. For me, like this is an all-timer villain character. Like I would put him right up there with Hugo Weaving in The Matrix, as
Mm.
far as villains go, where it's really hard to like tiptoe that line of like somebody who is like just evil by choice. Whenever given an option, he will pick the worst choice in terms of conscientiousness and not make them into a caricature. And they do it so well here. And it's just like in the Matrix, like I love the idea of like, yeah, they could get rid of him, but they'll just bring somebody else. Like that's not the solution, and in spite of that, he doesn't try to redeem himself at any point. He's always doing the most self-interested thing in the cruelest way possible, and he only even stops to like think about things in terms of what it says about him. Like I think about when he captures Mercedes and she is like telling him like I was under your nose this whole time because like you just can't bring yourself to think that a woman could do any of these things. And he just like he really like he meditates on that with her and like he genuinely like reflects on it for a second of like, yeah, I guess that is my weakness. But like it's not in like a oh, women can do anything kind of way. It's just like just one more thing that like I need to be more evil about, you know?
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. And yeah, just shout out to the actor Sergi Lopez. Like he is so good in that role. Like I fear for Ophelia anytime she's in a scene with him. I feel so bad for the for his like unborn son. Just like already, just like kind of if things go a different way, that kid is just condemned to like a horrible life of trying to like live in the shadow of a guy like that, you know? And then the mother is like a whole other like layer of sadness to it. It's just yeah, it's just and it all emanates from like his characterization of this like deeply flawed person.
Right. Right. Got to talk about the bottle scene, right? Like
Oh,
that sequence with the it's just so brutal. I kind of remembered it a little bit, but I almost forgot how truly brutal that sequence is. And I found an actual interesting interview with Guillermo del Toro where he talks about that scene, and he says he was inspired to write that scene by when he was a kid. He and a friend were in a fight during which his friend was beaten in the face with a bottle. So this is something that he'd witnessed, and a detail that stuck in his mind was that the bottle did not break. It's also similarly based on like some other stuff he'd read about in Spain and like during this time when fascists like would smash like citizens' faces with like pistols and over groceries because they, very, simple reasons, but like he's combining these ideas, but it's just like to think that that's just like an image that's stuck in his head. I feel like it's like almost more, it's way more powerful. Like it's intense. That was a brutal sequence.
it's ruthless.
Yeah.
I hate it. And it's like it's the unnecessariness of it because he
Right.
immediately kills him right after.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
he only does it to display to his men like what like how, like the lengths he'll go. And so yeah, everything about it, it's just like it's shot so vividly, so graphically, and then on top of that, like the guy like crying next to him, like you
Hmm.
killed him and like cussing him out, and just like he gets shot in the head. And there's so many headshots in this movie of like people that are unconscious or prone. It's so sad.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. One last thing about the captain is I don't know if you guys noticed this. I was reading this that the production does a production design note that the captain's office was meant to kind of reflect like the gears of his watch. If you kind of look at it from
Oh.
like
Oh.
a sort of wider shot, I thought that was pretty cool because I feel like watching a Guillermo del Toro movie, like production design is such a huge part. Like the sets and like every room feels very, very intentionally like created. And I
Yeah.
remember watching it and I was like, oh, his office is really fascinating. Like, and then I read that trivia piece. I was like, that totally makes sense. That's pretty cool. But
I love the shaving scenes. Like with this just like the suspended mirror that
yeah,
he's it's just I don't know. I love a good like straight razor in a movie, you know? It's just a cool aesthetic.
it really is. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So anyway, some of the fantastical elements I wanted to talk about too. So the movie Pan's Labyrinth, I'm sure we know this, both of us, all of us here, that like Pan was not the actual name of the character, it was the faun, and pretty much most places it was the essentially a translation was the labyrinth of the faun.
Yeah.
But they wanted to change it in English markets because they thought that name was more recognizable, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I had access to the movie in a like Spanish speaking country, so
Mm,
I know it by its original name in Spanish, El Laberinto del Fauno.
hmm.
So for me, like hearing Pan's Labyrinth, I'm like, why?
What
But
is
it's
that?
fine because the same thing happens the other way around when an English movie is translated to Spanish. We give it horrifying names, so it's fair.
Do you have any funny examples?
Oh my God. I can't remember right now, but oh yeah, like recent one, Devil Wears Prada. In Spanish, it's like the literal translation is like the devil dresses stylishly. Like what?
Awesome.
Why you like why are you assuming that nobody in Latin America knows what Prada is? That's rude.
Yeah. Yeah, that is rude.
Quite the assumption.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting little piece of it too. Um, the fawn was really cool, a cool character, and we're gonna get in the monster element in a little bit.
Oh
Uh,
hell yeah.
really loved the pale man. I think that's another like
Yeah.
I mean we'll get the monsters like really deep here in a moment here, but I thought the really interesting element about the pale man that's outside of the creature design itself was Del Toro was in this another interview I found. He describes it as quote a layman's riff on Catholic dogma, where he talked about this specifically. Well, he talks about the church's like relationship to fascism specifically in that era, but he also talks about the pale man represents the church a little bit. He says he represents fascism in the church, eating the children when they have a perversely abundant banquet in front of them. There's almost a hunger to eat innocence, a hunger to eat purity, and that's a quote from him. And I was like, damn.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
that
was
was kind
getting
of fun.
like Greek mythology too, a little bit. Isn't that a
Hmm.
thing that happens to like Persephone or something? And
Well, it's Kronos eats all of his children
Yep.
to prevent their rising and to perpetuate the tyranny of the giants. So, yeah.
and then they crack out of his head, right?
Well, it's more like Zeus tricks him into eating a stone instead of eating him, and the stone has this thing on it that makes him throw up all the other kids.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I agree. I told you that's one of my hyperfixations is Greek and Egyptian
that's right.
cultures.
This is perfect. Yeah.
But there's also the Greek, the one where the like Hades' bride or whatever, she eats something in hell. Am I mistaking that?
Oh yeah, that's Persephone. When Persephone goes to the underworld and she eats the pomegranate, she is then a part of that realm.
Yeah, that's what was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
evoked for me with like don't eat anything at this table. I
Mm-hmm.
immediately thought of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The grape, and she eats the grape. So was okay. There was a musical note. Like I remember thinking previously when I watched this a long time ago that I was like, why is she eating the grape? She was explicitly told not to do it. There's like a fairy tale element to like always not quite following the rules, and I know that's part of fairy tales. But like there was a musical note where she kind of like almost like kind of lifts up a little bit. Like was it meant to be that the feast is like magically tempting? Like is that part of it or no?
I think that that's a really good point because it wouldn't be the realm of the Fae if they weren't trying to trick you.
Right.
So, one of my other hyperfixations is mythology in general. And I know a lot about the Fae. The Fae, and the Fae are not only from Ireland and those northern European countries. The Fae are in almost every culture, except they know them for different names, but they always display the same behavior, which is that they have gray morality, so they're not good or evil. They are gray morality. They have their own rules, and they're very different from the human rules. And they are tricksters. They're
Mhm.
constantly trying to ensnare you into some kind of bargain that you're going to be in the losing end. So I am pretty sure that there were elements in there that, were meant to make the task more difficult of ignoring the feast because that is how they operate. The Fae will trick you, and the least thing that you will be expecting is going to be the trap.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, bringing it back to Catholicism, the original sin, even the apple. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just kind of like that temptation for temptation's sake kind of element.
Yeah, well said, well said. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting imagery in that. And like you guys were both talking about, I think it's like that what's that Anna, you said I think too the Saturn devouring his son painting, right? That's what's it?
Yeah.
Goya, right? Francisco Goya.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that painting, the classic one, that's definitely like an inspiration, which I think is super interesting. Yeah, that whole sequence, I feel like that was n- uh, first time I watched that, absolutely nightmare fuel, like terrifying sequence. Really well done. Really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the sequence that blew my mind beyond repair. When I saw the Pale Man, I was like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Like this is one
Yeah.
of the scariest things that I've ever seen. And like I don't remember being that uncomfortable by any monster or in any movie that I saw after. Like it's the Pale Man is just he is his own thing, that
Hmm.
nobody has ever been able to do something like that again.
It's the most enduring image of the film too, like long before I saw a single frame of the movie, I knew about the Pale Man and the hand eyes. Like
Yeah.
I told my roommate that I got to interview Doug Jones, and the first thing he did was go, like
With the hands, yeah.
it is an enduring like creature, like, and that is saying something, like you created like a new modern mythic creature.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it's incredibly unique. Let's dig into the monsters here. Two quick things before we do that. I wanted to just point out a couple fun little trivia pieces. So apparently, Del Toro actually actively wrote, he spent like a month doing this, wrote the English subtitles for this film himself because he was disappointed with the ones that were done for The Devil's Backbone prior to this, which is kind of cool. And the other fun fact that I think I've seen a lot of places is that he actually famously lost his notebook, which was filled with years of sketches, ideas, and annotations for this movie in the back of a London cab. However,
Oh,
the cabbie apparently returned it to him, so he was able to get it back.
Wow.
And on top of that, when making this movie, so this is like that's like a little bit of a roadblock to making this movie. He relied heavily on independent financing and actually sacrificed his own salary and back end points after some of the financial backing fell through to make this work. So this is like you mentioned, like this is kind of like his opus, Khalid. Like I think this was definitely like he kind of needed to make this work, even though like he sacrificed a lot for it. So it's kind of admirable.
wow.
Yeah.
We're all grateful for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing
Uh,
film. Yeah.
I have one last thing before we get to the monster.
Yeah.
So obviously this movie is bookended with like the tragic fact that Ophelia does not survive.
Hmm.
The fantasy, like not the fantasy sequence, but the sequence at the end when she's with her mom and her father and like the fawn or the fawn is there and everybody's cheering and stuff. Do you guys think that was real or just the dying visions of a girl?
I think that's real. Do you disagree?
Honest thinking about it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the things about the movie that could be
Yeah.
ambiguous because I mean, I have studied a lot the science of like what happens as you're dying, and there is a bodily thing that has to do with hallucinations. I'm
Mm.
not saying that there's nothing that comes after. Like I do believe in like an afterlife and I do believe in the supernatural, but I do also believe that as you're dying, you hallucinate. So like that's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know what, that was necessarily.
I gotta go pessimistic with it. I think it's just
Ooh.
the dying visions. Like I want so badly to believe that it's real, but it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. We know her brother survives. So for him to even be there kind of tilts it towards the wish fulfillment side of things for me, which makes it even more bittersweet more than anything. But also this is such a like realistic movie in a lot of ways of like it doesn't really sugarcoat that like a lot of the rebels are going to get tortured and killed, and it
Hmm.
shows us in detail obviously the sad fate of the doctor and everything. So when you get to the end, I feel like it would almost undermine that in a lot of ways because it would undermine her sacrifice in that like the fawn gives her an option to like give the blood of her brother to get paradise. So to just get that after the fact when she turned it down, which was the sacrifice, it undermines a lot of what the movie is trying to say in my mind, which is a sadder ending, but it's truer, I think.
I mean, I kind of see what you're saying. I also think that I mean that they kind of in the fantasy or the sort of like vision, if you want to call it a vision or if it's not reality, like they kind of say like he doesn't say necessarily you have to sacrifice your brother. He says the point is like the sacrifice of blood of the innocent, right? Has to open the gate.
He's real
So
cagey about how
he's
much blood.
he's very cagey about that, yeah. But he says blood of the innocent, and so like I think like I mean, I think that you could make the case that like I mean, she makes that choice to sacrifice herself over her brother. And like, I mean, that's the whole point of that little vision. Like, oh, you made the right choice. You sacrificed yourself instead of the brother. You had to like, but like the idea that in the beginning in that narrative where it says like the princess left the fantasy realm. She like basically dies in the fantasy realm to become human. I think there's an element where she has to like die in the human realm to go back to that fantasy realm too. So I kind of thought of that, but then there's also the part where there's the narration and like the flower piece where it's like, oh, like, little elements that she left behind of her existence in the human world. I don't know. I think that there is a certain weight that could be given to the fact that it could be real, and it wouldn't diminish the storyline.
All right. Well, I feel like we're at a three-way tie here. We all have our takeaways, which is I think a testament to the movie more than anything. I'm not saying I'm any more right than anybody else. But
Could also be
yeah.
that just makes me sad if she doesn't. I like the happy end. I don't know. Sometimes like I like some dark horror and some really pessimistic endings, but sometimes in a situation like this, I'm like, I want some people to be happy.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to like a kid, like I would always prefer that the true ending isn't that they died horribly.
Also,
Right.
like I'm gonna add an extra layer to this. So I firmly believe, because I have been studying Guillermo for a few years, and I firmly believe that he's an occultist. I think he's a guy who's like into the occult and into esotericism. And if he knows the same things that I know, he knows that death is also like an alchemical process of transmutation. So there is a big possibility that that is just her transmuting into like her more divine or her more, like her version in the realm of the Fae, which is ultimately kind of like what she was building up for.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Yes. Yes.
Hmm
I feel that. I feel that.
Fair enough. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
Yeah. Good question though, Khalid. That was a good question.
Thank you.
Shall we monster?
Let's do
Yes.
it.
Let's monster. So going through this, there were five distinct creature elements to this. Do you guys know what the five of them were?
Like what, five creatures?
Five creatures.
So there's the frog,
Frog,
fairies,
fairies,
The Pale Man,
pale
the
man,
Fawn.
fawn.
what was the last one? Oh, it wasn't like because like the bug is the fairy, right?
Bug is the fairy.
Yeah.
This was mandrake root.
Oh shit,
Oh,
yes.
Yeah,
I always
Yes.
forget
mandrake.
about that little guy. They
The
should
little
have
guy.
made
Yeah.
they should have merchandised the hell out of that. That could have been the Grogu
It's like their
of,
Baby Yoda,
of
yeah.
2006. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Harry
totally.
Potter took advantage of that
Oh,
one.
it did. It did. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But yeah, there's five elements. I really like. It's interesting to kind of break down each one. So I'm gonna start with some of the lesser ones and then go to the like, big ones towards the end. But we start with fairies. I feel like we're the first one we see, and as you mentioned,
Hmm
Khalid, they're the stick bugs that transform into more traditional fairy shape. Del Toro initially wanted them to be kind of like monkey-like and a little more earthy and grimy. But the animation company they worked with, Cafe FX, ended up giving them the idea for the leaves for the wings, which she ended up really liking. And so the fairies were done through CGI digital effects. The stand-in on set for the fairies, when the actor who played Ophelia was working with them mostly, was a Bratz doll painted green with its hair cut off. Kind of a fun fact.
Oh.
Love this was my favorite part about the fairies. The pale man eating the fairies, those scenes. Um, to make that work, the fairy eating scene, Doug Jones, who played the pale man, he bit down on gelatin condoms filled with artificial blood that they digitally kind of put the fairies in post.
I was gonna ask because that looked so good. I was like, there's
Yeah.
no way that's all CGI.
No, that was cool. Yeah, that was really cool, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty badass. That's a cool sequence. So the fairies were kind of interesting. They were mostly kind of designed digitally, and that's uh, I thought they looked pretty good. My favorite part was the sort of transformation when the stick bug sees the sort of fairy image in her book and kind of becomes the more traditional fairy look.
hmm
I thought that was really cool and really well done.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Then we have the giant toad, which is an interesting thing. So according to Del Toro, it's sort of like this metaphor for like the wealth of the world kind of devouring from inside sort of thing. So it's this rich thing devouring the tree from the inside, right?
hmm
Um, Started off though as a giant animatronic puppet, and I think there's a couple sequences where we actually do see the physical prop. But it did come off a little too stilted, and apparently the puppet itself like when it was in the mud that they were in, it got like super heavy in the foam rubber, so like
Hmm.
they couldn't actually maneuver it, the puppeteers, so they end up using a lot more like digital effects to make the toad happen, especially with the tongue sequences. But that ended up being more of a digital effect as well. But that was kind of an interesting a creature to include as well. And then the Mandrake root, which we talked about just a moment, the Mandrake root was also originally designed as a puppet animatronic, but they end up going more digital on that one as well because the Mandrake was meant to mirror Ophelia's mother because it was meant to be this sort of thing like it's going to help your mother feel better. So like
Hmm.
when they put it under the bed in the milk, like it was supposed to specifically mirror the movements of her mother, like as she's moving on the bed as well, kind of
Ah,
establishing that connection between the healing connection between the two. So that thought that was kind of interesting.
I thought it was the baby.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, no, it's supposed to be the mother. Yeah.
Interesting, because it's got such babyish mannerisms. Like,
It's yeah. It is, yeah, yeah. But those three were definitely like more they brought in some more digital like post effects for to doing
Hmm.
those. But the last two that we're going to talk about, the Pale Man and the Fawn, were almost entirely practical and those are
Yeah, that's
very yeah.
that's a part that I'm super invested into because I like have done the research about the people that built it and
Hmm.
what they went through. I even worked for one of the guys who worked on that show. So,
Oh, really?
yeah.
That's amazing. What in what situation was that when you were doing Cabinet of Curiosities?
No, that was when I was working in the Jeffrey Dahmer TV show.
Oh, yeah.
ah,
I worked for Arjen, who is a guy from the Netherlands who has his own studio here in LA, but he was in his early 20s working for DDT studio in Spain in Pan's Labyrinth. And if I am not wrong, he sculpted the Pale Man.
Hmm.
So, or he either sculpted it or applied the makeup, either or both. But I know he was working in that project and I know that he was working in that creature.
Yeah, that's really cool. I saw like I didn't see the name specifically when I was doing research, but I saw DDT come up a lot with like
Hmm.
especially the Pale Man.
Yeah.
It sounds like so from what I got, again, Doug Jones performed it. He was wearing a green screen suit inside of it, but it was like a vacuum form thing that he kind of had to wear with foam latex skin, and he had like a leaf space for his mouth, but he had prosthetic teeth over his real teeth, and the arms were kind of in like a gel to simulate the
Hmm.
kind of like drooping effect.
Hmm.
And apparently he could only see through the nostrils, which I thought was
Yeah.
kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because Guillermo asked the department head from DDT Studio to make the creature blind and to put his eyes in his hands, and they're like, so how's the actor gonna see?
Yeah.
So they had to make him see through the only orifice that he had in his face other than his mouth, which was, his nostrils.
Yeah. Exactly. There's a so I watched this when I was watching this. I watched it. I have the Criterion Blu-ray for it, and so there's a lot of really cool like extra features on this. And I watched an interview with Doug Jones where he was talking about it, and he said the first time that he did the Pale Man, he kind of misinterpreted what he was supposed to do, like when he was chasing Ophelia down the hallway. He kind of did this sort of like sort of like almost like fluid movements, you know? But then Guillermo del Toro stopped him afterwards and was like, think of the Romero zombies and be more stilted. And so
ah,
then he was like thinking of like, oh, this guy like just woke up after like years and years and years and years of not eating. So he's like, that's why he's all droopy because he doesn't have his fat
Yeah.
anymore. Right. So then
Oh,
he thought of it differently as like a zombie, like almost like trying to get his food. And so like I love that. And also like that adds to why he's like a little more clumsy, like that
uh-huh.
moment when he's like reaching for her to like climbing out. That was yeah, it was really cool. Really, really great physical performance, I thought.
well, it also works in character because he's like functionally blind.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he has eyes, but like they're not like conveniently at your head, so you could like orient yourself. Like, I feel like you would be clumsy if you had to just go based off of the palms of your hands, and so it all just like I don't know, it all just works in such a horrifying but like fascinating way.
Oh,
Do you guys
totally.
know the story of why he ended up having his eyes in his hands?
No, why?
No.
So DDT Studios, they were doing what we all do in the world of creature design, which is go by the laws of creature design. There are things that are too stupid, too ridiculous, so you should not do those things. However, that's not how it works with Guillermo, because Guillermo is all about the fantasy, you know? So the makeup designer at DDT was like, all these instructions you're giving me are making no sense, and I am frustrated. How am I gonna like how is he gonna chase after her if he can't see? And then Guillermo asked him to close his eyes, and he's like, okay. And then he's like, how are you gonna find me with your eyes closed? And the guy went like this and extended
Mm.
his hands, and Guillermo grabbed
Ah.
his hand and drew an eye with a Sharpie in his palm. And he's like, you have to think magically, you know? And the guy was like, oh. So
Wow.
that's, I mean, how cool, you know? How cool working with someone like that. I would love to work with someone like that.
That's amazing. I
Mhm.
love that story.
It's
That's
great.
that's
Yeah.
so cool. That's so cool. I love that. I love that. It's just the creativity and the weirdness that like makes this like this whole like movie watching process like amazing. Like it's so fun. I love it. So as Khalid mentioned, we did actually talk to Doug Jones not like just a couple weeks ago on this podcast, which was super fun. And I loved hearing his stories. He did talk about this movie a little bit, and he kind of talked about how he was cast to do the fawn. He talked about how he learned Spanish for this, even though he was kind of dubbed over by another actor.
Mm,
But like he wanted to make sure that his mouth like wasn't just like it wasn't just kind of like doing something else while this actor
yeah.
was like talking, which is really cool. I also love like when he talked about how when he was cast as the fawn, like Guillermo was like, "You're gonna also do this pale man," and he's like, "Oh, you cheap ass! You're not gonna hire another actor for it." That's what he said. That was great. Love that. I think that's a story he's told a lot, but it was fun. Um, anyway, the fawn. Let's get to the fawn. So, like Doug Jones again plays the fawn. It was Pablo Adan who voiced in post production. Um, the fawn was designed. I think a lot of the actually, I didn't mention this earlier, but a lot of the initial designs were Sergio Sandoval, who
Hmm.
is a comic artist, I believe, and did some other concept art, but he did a lot of the creature designs here. He mentions
Nice.
that the spiral engravings on the face and the body of the fawn were meant to like reflect the labyrinth itself, which is kind of cool.
Mm,
The practical costume were David Marti and close collaborator Monsi Ribe, if I'm pronouncing those names correctly, worked on the practical costume. And in the interview that I was watching with Doug on the Criterion disc, he talks about those two being kind of miracle workers because this was like the first time in his career that he'd taken off a costume and not had like red marks on his body that extended for periods of time afterwards, which is
wow.
amazing given how intricate the fawn costume was, I thought, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's spectacular. But essentially, they built two suits and an animatronic head extension, an understructure that had mechanisms that could animate the face,
Hmm.
which are covered in foam latex skin. The motion of the creature's eyes, nose, and ears were controlled by motors that were in the actual horns, which I thought was pretty interesting and kind of cool. And of course, he wore dental prosthetics. Um, but the one of the most interesting pieces to me, I thought, was the legs. I think that looking at
Hmm.
like kind of those like bent backwards kneecaps that he sort of has, the fawn, it's like I was always like you're always like how are they doing that? Like I know like Doug Jones wears stilts in a lot of stuff. Like you see like Star Trek Discovery, like Saru is on stilts or something like that. But this is like it's like how is his leg actually going backwards like that? Apparently he's wearing green
Yeah.
stockings on his
Mhm.
legs to cover
It's
like
the green screen leg
yeah,
movement.
the
Yeah.
green screen his like actual legs, his calves, and his like shins, and it's like a pup, like a kind of like a physical prop that goes backwards and does those legs. So he's almost puppeteering the legs with his own legs through his
Hmm.
movement, which is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah. Crazy.
like
You,
speechless for
you
a
can't even
moment.
tell when you're looking at it. Like that's the beauty of it. Like it just looks like a real creature. Like
Hmm.
It's crazy because I always run into Doug at the same place where he likes eating and I like eating, and I
Yeah,
always like forget that he does such crazy work, you know. It's because I'm like, oh, look, there's Doug, but you know, it's insane what creature actors have to go through.
true.
Insane. One of my best friends is a creature actor, so if you ever want to interview a creature actor, I can give you her information.
Always, we
please.
always do. Like
Yes.
we love talking to creature
Yes.
actors. That's our jam here. Yeah, we love like that's. the unsung heroes of movies, honestly, like is some of these like creature actors, and that's like another thing we celebrate, true, and too. So yeah, absolutely. Did you guys notice the fawn character kind of ages backwards?
No.
Yeah, you did, Anna. Yeah. That's a cool piece to it. I think it's like so it's like he starts he's older, and so like I think even in the interview like Doug talks about like having to like pinpoint different parts of like the life cycle of like being older, being younger throughout the film, and like when they were shooting it, he'd be like, what stage of the life cycle am I in right now, essentially.
Does it have to do with like time moving backwards there or something?
I think like the idea, and Anna, if you think differently, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the idea behind it is that as he's sort of approaching the notion of like the princess returning and sort of revitalizing the life of this like fantastical underworld, like he's kind of regaining his youth, I think.
I think so. I think it's definitely one of those things where um the restoring of the order of things brings him back.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I have seen that makeup and I've studied it so many times. I have, seen all the pictures of like the comparison, and I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that was a really cool piece to it. That it's also like another thing I like about this movie is that just like it's not explicitly stated in the text of it. Like I think sometimes movies will like over explain things, and I think like something like that, it's like you kind of have to really think about or like notice it, you know?
Yeah, plus it's the realm of the fae, things
Yeah.
that are just different and they don't make sense to us and they don't have to.
Exactly. It's fine. Yeah, it's just it's
Hmm.
weird. I also loved a small little piece I was reading about too is that when Guillermo was directing Doug Jones on the Fawn's movements, he said think about like cows and how cows like move when like flies or bugs like kind of get on them, and so he added these little ticks and like twitches and movements like you'll kind of see throughout the film like when
Yeah.
just randomly just to kind of be like shaking off flies even though he doesn't have flies on him at the moment, but like it's just something like a habit that he would do as a creature.
Yeah, his twitchy movement is great because I think that if you don't add those extra ticks and particular kind of like repetitive behaviors that a particular creature has, they all end up moving the same. Like I always see creature actors before the director gives them direction, and they all kind of start very similarly, and then they start becoming the unique version of the character that they're playing as they start receiving more input or themselves
Mm.
getting more into the character.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so cool. Um, Anna, you kind of mentioned briefly in the beginning of the podcast, but like you did briefly work with Guillermo del Toro a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Would you want to like, tell us a little bit more about that? Like, what's your relationship with him been since watching
So
this?
I haven't been in the room with Guillermo ever. Like I've never met him face to face, but
Okay.
I was working on his show and I was working for a studio that was hired by Mike Hill, who was his main makeup artist who just won the Oscar for Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I was working under that team, and we were doing something for his project for Cabinet. And even though Cabinet had 8 different episodes with 8 different makeup teams, I think that the autopsy, which is the episode that I worked on, was my favorite from the whole anthology. And not because I worked on it, but because uh just like the episode had the best writing, in my opinion. The writing was amazing, the story was amazing, and also the lead actor is one of my favorite actors from Amadeus, which is one of my favorite movies.
Mm.
So, F. Murray Abraham is like he's so freaking good. And I didn't know he was going to be the lead actor on that. And just knowing that I was working for Guillermo, knowing that I was working for my hero, really, and my name is on the credits. Like you see the show, like my name is there in the makeup team. I was giving it like my 800%. Like it really made me put a lot of work and dedication into that project. And it was a difficult project because we had a lot to do in a very short frame of time. But I know, and I'm just putting it out there in the universe. I have to meet Guillermo at some point. Like I have to, I need to. Like it's something that has been overdue for years for my own selfish reasons. And I feel like if I ever meet him, it's not going to be awkward because I think that one thing is meeting someone as a fan, and one thing is meeting someone as like, hey, I worked on your show. It's a very different situation when you can say that and immediately have already a connection to the person.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
hopefully it happens.
I feel like it will at this. I mean, you're making the steps. Yeah, we're manifesting it right now in this podcast. I
Yeah,
think.
hell
Yeah,
yeah.
Make it
it'll happen.
happen, universe. Make it happen.
Yes, absolutely. That's so cool. Do we have any final Pan's Labyrinth thoughts?
I just think it's so cool that this movie predates The Dark Knight and then the Joker smile, like the cut.
Yeah, great
Oh, that's
point. Great point.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was really trying to time it. I was like, when did this movie come out? Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, definitely it's 2 years earlier. It's I don't want to be like, oh, he watched this, like Chris Riddle watched this and got inspiration for the thing, because I know that like that kind of disfigurement is common throughout history, but it's really, really hard not to like watch this and the way that it looks on him before he sews it shut and then not think of the Joker, at least for
Hmm.
me.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to add an element to this conversation before we wrap it up, and it's the fact that one thing that for me makes me be way more connected to Guillermo than to any other creative out there is that he is from a background similar to mine. He is Latin America. And in Latin America, we have like a collective sort of spirit of these universal experiences that every Latin American person can relate to. And I feel like no matter how much time he spent in the US and no matter how much time he has worked with American crews, you can always feel the Latin American spirit in his work. Uh, in so many ways, for instance, magical realism. Like, who is the father of magical realism if not Gabriel Garcia Marquez in his work 100 Years of Solitude? He is the master of magical realism. And I feel like anyone who grew up in Latin America and was made to read that book in school respects that, the genre, and respects the use of magical realism storytelling. It's such a Hispanic thing. And there's also the undeniable woven uh essence of being raised Catholic, because when you're from Latin America, unless you are from like a different ethnic group or a different religious group, most people are raised Catholic. And whether they continue to follow that religion later in their lives or not, you are still woven into the fabric of what that culture looks like. So one instance is like the element of martyrdom.
Mm,
It's like, isn't Ophelia a martyr? Like, of course she is.
Yeah.
And so there's all these elements that come from all those different roots that are so Latin American in nature that there's a part of me that finds home in his work because of that similar ancestry and that similar background that we have.
yeah.
Wow.
Well said. Well said indeed. Yeah, that's great to hear. Um, I feel like we mention Ophelia as well. We should shout out the actor. It's Ivana Baquero, I believe her name is.
Hmm.
I thought that speaking of like, yeah, the martyr element too, that's a really good point. She was amazing. I am surprised that I haven't seen her in that much afterwards, but I did see her. She was in Shannara Chronicles. You guys see that?
I
No.
haven't seen it.
Shannara, it's like this MTV fantasy series based on the Shannara books by Shannara Chronicles books by Terry Brooks. I read the books too. I watched the show. Austin Butler started there too.
Mm.
Yeah, really weird,
Oh.
but yeah, but she's one of the leads in that show. So if you like her, check out that show. Well, anyway, no, I want to thank you guys both. This was a really wonderful conversation. We have one like final segment of the show we do before we close out. It's our what the fandom segment. And what we do here is we just share kind of like one or two things that we're sort of into at the moment. We've seen, watched, read, played, anything like that that we just want to like recommend to the listeners. We usually let our guests go last, so Anna, I got a little couple extra moments to think if you want to recommend something. But Khalid,
Hmm.
why don't we start with you? What the fandom with you this week?
Thanks for asking, Joe. My what the fandom this week is gonna be the new Vince Staples album, Crybaby. I think it's very in keeping with Pan's Labyrinth and like the fact that Vince in this album is very much touching on Americana with regards to fascism and what it does to marginalized people and the way that like we're all being just like slowly driven insane by the things that we're seeing in media more than anything else. This is his first independent album. He has left his label because he was frustrated with only being like tasked with doing hip hop. So this is kind of a hip hop punk music fusion. And I think the best way I would describe it is like every song on this album sounds like something Spider-Punk from the Spider-Verse movie would be like playing as he's swinging through his universe. You know, it's very just like aggressive, anti-establishment, but just so easy to nod along to, and it's just great. Like I feel like it's a great installation in like the pantheon of rock and roll albums. And so yeah, it's also just really funny. Vince Staples is, for my money, the funniest rapper alive. And so it's got a lot of humor and it all just works really well. And yeah, it's a brisk 30 minutes. So like throw it on, you'll be done before you know it. And I don't think you'll regret the time spent on it. So yeah. Oh, and the album cover is literally like a big fat like blonde baby with an American flag diaper. So like he's saying a lot. It's a lot to chew on. I'm still parsing through it, but I'm enjoying it a lot. So that'll be my what the fandom this week. And Joe, what the fandom with you?
Thanks for asking, Khalid. Cool rec, by the way. Vince Staples, I always associate with you because we went to the concert when I was in LA with you. Saw him live.
We did.
That
Yes,
was a
yes.
great memory. Great
I
memory.
remember
Never
you were
forget that.
blown away by the production value of it.
I was.
Yeah.
My fandom this week, I'm going to recommend a couple ones that I'm kind of in relation to my children, actually. My daughter, who is 7 years old, recently, not too long ago, got us a Nintendo Switch. I've talked about this in the podcast before, but we got the Pokemon Shield, which was part of that Pokemon Sword and Shield pairing.
Oh.
And she somehow got really into Pokemon. I think some friends of hers gave her some cards at school. So I've kind of been fostering it a little bit. We've been watching the Indigo League, the OG anime, but we've been playing the Pokemon Shield on the Switch together. And she's been playing on her own. I have my own profile, but for some reason, like it's been super fun. Like I've been liking some indie games on the Switch a lot that I've recommended, but like this, I know this is like a mainstream Nintendo game, but really digging it. Super fun. Like a cool like update to the classic like RPG Pokemon games from the Game Boys. I think it takes it kind of like in a sort of a 3D realm, and I've been really enjoying it. And she's really having a fun time. I also want to have a second recommendation that doesn't necessarily need a recommendation, I'll say, but again, I brought my kids to this. We walked up to the neighborhood theater and we got to pick a movie for our kids, and they picked the new Star Wars movie, Mandalorian and Grogu, which doesn't need recommendations. It's Disney. It's doing fine, I'm sure. But I saw it with my brother-in-law, Luke, who is a Star Wars fan, and he's been on the podcast before. And then our kids, who are, again, my daughter, who's 7, and my son, who's 4, wanted to check this out. And it was just really kind of a special moment to see like Star Wars on a big screen with the kids for the first time. That was their first like Star Wars movie on the big screen. Just kind of seeing, I'm really happy that this movie brought in a lot of miniature work. They had Tippett Studios doing some of like these cool like robot scenes. They had a lot of like puppetry with the Grogu character. There's a lot of CGI. There's a lot of silliness to it, but I was like, it's kind of earnest, and I actually really ended up appreciating it a lot. And I think a lot of that comes just from just seeing like my kids like being like, whoa, like that's amazing to see on the big screen. And so that was kind of special. So I did really love Mandalorian and Grogu. I would recommend it, especially if you're seeing it with some kids who are kind of like appreciating the magic of cinema again. I know that there's a lot of amazing like indie horror right now that's dominating the box office, and I'm a big fan of that element. Going to see some of those this week, so I'm sure those will end up on my fandoms next week. But those are mine this week: Pokemon Shield and Mandalorian and Grogu for now. But how about you, Anna? What the fandom with you?
So first of all, shout out to my friend Nicholas Winstead, who puppeteered the bird in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. That
Amazing.
was awesome. I went to the cast and crew screening because my friend Robert played the piano for the soundtrack. So like I have two friends who worked on the movie,
Ah,
so that
yes.
made it even more special. And I also loved it.
So
But
good.
if I had to recommend something to people, I am going to go for a completely different media here, and I'm gonna go back to good old books because I feel like we are losing the habit of reading because we have accustomed ourselves too much to instant gratification and short format content, and I am forcing myself to be uncomfortable with a slow burn, and I am reading books for that reason. It's good for you. Plus, it's so curated. Books are mostly if they're bestsellers, they're mostly like really well written. So there is a book that the genre and the vibe is very similar for me to Pan's Labyrinth, but with a completely different set of characters. The name of the book is The Starving Saints.
Hmm.
It's like a horror fantasy, and there are some elements of magical realism. But I'm going to tell you the kind of like the summary without spoiling the major spoiler. There is this kingdom that is under siege by an enemy kingdom. So their last Hail Mary to survive is that they close themselves off from the rest of the world and they go into a full lockdown. 5 years, I think, into the beginning of the lockdown, the food finally runs out. And they are now experiencing famine. So what happens? They have a coven within that kingdom that is like the religious group, and they have their own saints, which are different from the Catholic religion, but they are very similar in other ways. And within that coven, there is this former nun who was expelled because of heresy, supposedly. And apparently it's because she can do magic. So she herself doesn't even know how magic works. Like the rules of this world are not explained to anybody. They just throw you into it. So what happens is that the king appoints her the last and only miracle of making food and water come back. And she has no idea how she's going to do it. Very early in the book, you learn that she somehow managed to purify water, and she herself doesn't even understand very well the mechanism through which she managed to purify the water. But because she did the water miracle, now they're expecting for her to do the food miracle, but she's taking too long, so there's like a little bit of cannibalism that starts being
Oh boy.
introduced into the story. So the story's crazy, but it is a fantasy horror, and I just love the book, and it was a really quick read. So The Starving Saints, if anybody's interested.
Cool. Great
Yeah,
recommendation. That's
yeah.
Caitlin Starling, right?
Oh, is it? I
I think the
forgot the name
author.
of the author. I forgot the name of the author,
I believe
but
so. I
okay. So
uh
you've heard about it?
I have. Luminous Dead
Cool.
is another book that she wrote. That's really good.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
you like
Yeah,
her,
yeah,
check
yeah.
that one
It's
out.
her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool.
That's amazing. Great recommendation. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Anna, for joining us. Is there anything before we leave you, anything you want to like plug, any upcoming work or any like social media places people can find you, anything like that?
Yeah, so I don't have any work particularly that I want to pitch or give a shout out right now. So I'm just gonna say that if you want to check out my makeup work, you can follow my Instagram, which is Ave Monsters. So that is AVE Monsters. And that's
Got it.
it. I'm only on Instagram. I'm not anywhere else.
All right. We'll link it for sure. Truly, this was amazing. I mentioned we got to chat with Doug Jones recently, so like I was super stoked when you mentioned you want to do Pan's Labyrinth. I'm like, absolutely want to rewatch that. Like
Oh yeah.
this was a joy to kind of come back to this one. So I really appreciate you and thank you for taking the time to join us on the podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me here. It was really nice chatting with you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Like honestly, having like people like you that are in the industry making these effects that Joe and I have spent the better part of 5 years just geeking out over. It's always an extra treat to be able to bring one of you on and just like hear your perspective and your experience. It really just like adds to the whole conversation. So thank you.
Oh.
And thank you all at home or wherever you listen to this podcast for listening to this discussion. And until next time, creep it easy. Frankenstein's podcast is hosted by Joe Praska and me, Khalid Hussein, with music from Jim Hall and original artwork from Jim Tandberg. A reminder that we do have a Patreon if you are interested and able to support our show. We are a fully independent podcast maintained as a labor of love, so anything helps. You can become a Patreon at the $1 or $3 level, or you can become a producer at the $7 level. Becoming a patron gives you access to bonus content like Frankenbits, where we discuss a range of topics often outside the realm of monsters. Thank you to our current Patreon producers, Luke Johnson, Andy Groth, Jay Cole, and Joe Michaud. And thank you to each and every one of you listening.